couldn't help but noticing just how detail-oriented you really know these cars.
Yeah, I'm Mark Vio, and I'm the owner of Vio Motorsports.
No, I'm Aaron Bordage. I work with Mark Vio. I'm also an independent automotive consultant.
And we specialize in Plymouths, Dodges, 1962 to 1965, what's considered B-bodies in the Mopar world. We also specialize in A-bodies, which are Dusters, Demons, Darts, and early Barracudas. And we also specialize in E-bodies, Barracudas, Challengers. We also work on some of the late model cars. But our specialty is 62 to 5.
In this case, you had a client that had owned a car for 10 years and really wanted to know just what he had.
We understand these cars very well because we've taken every nut and bolt from a car like this one apart and then reassembled it. So the devil's in the details, and we look at those details when we look at a car.
You really know these cars very well. You know exactly where to look, and what he was looking for was somebody that knew what he was doing.
We were contacted by the owner of this vehicle. He had presented to us that he was interested in selling the vehicle at the time and had some interested parties that were raising some questions that he wasn't able to answer. With the considerable literature he has with the vehicle, even with the vehicle sitting before him, he just wasn't able to address those questions appropriately. So he contacted myself and Mark to come down here to this facility and to do an inspection of the vehicle and present our findings of what we think this vehicle is. And just kind of give the car a bumper to bumper, see what it is. We'll check through his documentation that he provided and give him our best assessment of what we think this vehicle is.
And the purpose of doing this is what, Aaron?
1 year only rear axle. And some racers, after a year, changed out to a larger rear axle. And one of the indicators is the size of the spline and the size of the nut on the side of the axle.
Well, also 62 to 64 had the
bolt-on drum.
The bolt-on drum, yeah. And there's actually
so this confirms that it's a pre-65 rear axle, which would be consistent with a max wedge for this vintage. But then also we can measure the spline and the size of the nut. We can figure out what year the axle shafts are.
Also, this side were all left-hand tread, which it is.
You doing the measurement too, just to...
Just checking the tire and the wheel size.
You have to really get down to the fine threads, don't you?
Well, you know, when the authenticity is the question, it's like we were telling Gary before, in 20 years of dealing with Mopar, I never say never, you know, because Chrysler was, you know, Monday through Friday every day was a different car.
Guys, what specifically do you check for in the trunk? What would be telltale signs?
We're looking for locations where possibly there was any panel replacement. These cars or vehicles were, you know, prone to a considerable amount of rust. Through the back window, down the inner fenders, and it would just sit underneath the rubber mat. And it's quite common to find these cars with trunk floors and rear floors completely rotted out. So we're just looking for any kind of signs of where a panel may have been replaced. Checking spot weld locations, checking seam sealer application. And everything looks pretty consistent. There's a couple spot welds here, but they're not. Doesn't look like a whole panel has been done.
I mean, there's indication that there was evidence there had been some rust, especially down in that area.
Just that textured area.
Right, that textured area.
But they didn't replace it.
But it's not rusted through.
Typically, you wouldn't replace it.
No.
Adds to the charm.
Well, isn't that where the booze bottle broke and it just sat in there?
That's exactly it.
Chrysler used certain types of bolts.
Yeah.
You see that number 26?
Yeah.
That's pretty standard for Chrysler. Yeah. Aaron and I are kind of picky about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
if you don't use the correct bolt.
Yeah, exactly. This was found in a chicken coop, believe it or not, in South Carolina.
Is that right?
I don't know why he hid it away, but that's where they found it.
You check distributor and everything, huh?
They used a particular distributor.
They used a particular distributor.
Did they really?
And you don't have it.
I don't?
No.
That's not good. Where do you get the distributor?
From a pile in someone's garage.
Yeah, you got to find it.
Get the number off the water pump.
They made that pump housing from 1959 through 1980.
Yeah, it's an 18-inch.
That should be 19 and a quarter.
Let me get to the outside. And then I won't get to 19 and a quarter.
I think we're done with the all around. Go ahead and throw it up on the rack.
Make sure you
Part of the fun history of cars that had a potential being a race car. This is, it looks to be the bottom sump off of a truck or a motorhome oil pan that's been grafted onto what looks to be an original oil pan. Now, that doesn't say one way or another, but this would be consistent with someone trying to add oil capacity for a drag race car. Because these oil pans didn't hold that much oil compared to what most race car guys are running today in the 6 and 7 quart capacities.
Yeah, these had a unique oil pan only to the max wedge.
So that's just kind of the neat stuff, the lens to some of the... this car had fun.
Yeah. As it should be. And you gentlemen acquired all this knowledge by driving these all through your youth?
Restoring them, hanging out at car shows, talking to the original old guys, as many as you can come across. You know, one of the guys we used to hang out with down in San Diego was Chuck Beal. You know, he's a Top Fuel funny car guy from Southern California. You know, he's, if he doesn't know it, he knows someone who does know it.
Yeah, that's a cool part of it.
Well,
Mark spent a lot of time in the valley growing up, so.
used to go to San Fernando drag strips, and then I bought every magazine I could get my hands on. So I have all those magazines.
Yeah.
From those original.
The original 63, 4, 5 magazines. So it's nothing like going back and pulling out a copy of Cars magazine from 1960 going, well, what did this thing look like?
Yeah.
You know, 62? Oh, we're missing an ear on the transmission.
Is that good?
You only have 75% of the attaching bolts.
Oh.
And nowhere to put number 25. Flange here that bolts on, typically there's a lip.
Yeah.
It looks like that lip has been ground off and another piece has been bolted on place of it. And it's what helps center and locate this casting that holds the front drive shaft. Again, one of those, that's interesting.
Why did you do that?
Exactly. Well, you never know what happened when and where. You know, if it was actually raced competitively, you know, these are things that people would discover as the car went down the track. And, well, that broke. Let's put another one on.
Yeah, really.
Or let's put a different one on.
Probably a lot of guys in gas stations did this kind of work at night when they worked there, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, the date number is behind the corner of that block.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
so
got
this
you.
whole shaft,
Yeah.
this whole shaft should be over that way.
Okay.
And actually it looks like it's in backwards.
Is it really?
Yeah. If you look on the top side, there's a little spring clip.
Yep.
Typically that spring clip is on the frame rail side of that rod.
And while we're on maintenance, your rooming your axle seals are leaking on both sides.
Were they really? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
This car would have to have been built late '62.
Is there a part number in the story?
Right there, 209.
Yeah, this car's in the Chrysler registry.
It is? Okay. Well, that leads to authenticity.
Yeah.
Bought it from a guy in Kansas who bought it from a fellow in Oklahoma who had it in a museum for 20 years. And he bought it from a guy in South Carolina who found it in his chicken coop.
Wow.
That's the story. Be restored by Chuck Stimson. I've had it now for 10 years.
Because most everything looks pretty accurate. And we're going to double check it.
Sure,
but
sure.
most everything looks pretty accurate. I would start looking for things like, because that's what's going to sell the car. And there's little things that are missing. And it's just details. It's all details.
Things that have paint on them that shouldn't have paint. Just off the top, the striker inside the door jamb, those were put on after the car was painted.
Were they really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So typically those won't have body colored paint on them.
Yeah, well,
And the car is so close.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. It's 85%.
Well, it's just the details.
It's the
So
details.
Little tiny stuff,
Yeah.
so there's nothing.
and you'll tell me what the details are.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay,
give you
cool.
right up on all that.